Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Well, last week I had a liberal and a conservative candidate that I interviewed, and today I want to introduce you to really an impressive guy that I've known for a couple of years, maybe more than a decade, Craig Laferriere, who is a Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. Craig is a fascinating gentleman. He's had a long-term career in pharmaceuticals and biotech. He's currently head of vaccine development at Novature Ventures, and he is the Green Party candidate, as I mentioned, in Mississauga Centre. We know each other because we actually go to church together, and we've been in a bunch of Christmas plays and things like that together. Craig, how are you? Welcome to our show.
I'm doing very well, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on the show with you.
So congratulations on your candidacy. Craig, I never thought that you were that political. I always knew you as someone that was really interested in healthcare and life sciences. What caused you to decide to become a Green Party candidate?
Well, ever since I was finishing my graduate studies, I had been interested in politics, but an opportunity never arose. In fact, I did some volunteer work with Carolyn Parrish and some of her campaigns. But, when you come in as a volunteer, you tend to be putting up signs and things like that. It's very hard. You need to spend a lot of years doing it. And of course, I had a full-time career in pharmaceutical industry. And so didn't have a lot of time to devote to it. But I retired a few years ago and got interested in the Green Party. And when I looked on their website, I saw that they were looking for candidates. So the opportunity arose. I had always had the interest, so I applied, and they accepted me as the candidate for Mississauga Centre.
And how long have you been out canvassing and campaigning and talking to people?
Well, you know what? I anticipated that the election was going to be in the fall, and I had just been heard at the end of July that the Green Party had accepted me as the candidate. And then we went away camping. And so when we were away camping, that's when I heard that the writ had dropped. And so I had to come back and get organized as quickly as possible. So not that long, out talking to people, only a week now.
So I got to tell you, sometimes I complain that people don't have enough experience when they run for politics. I got to tell you, this gentleman has got a ton of experience. Let me just tell you a little bit about Craig. So he's got a bachelor's in organic chemistry from Carleton University. He's got a PhD in synthetic organic chemistry from the University of Ottawa. I knew him most when he was working for GlaxoSmithKline, which he did for quite a long period of time. But he's got a lot of other experiences. He was the head of vaccine manufacturing at Canvax. He was a regional medical research specialist at Pfizer. He's a lecturer at the University of Toronto. He was a consultant at PATH, which advised vaccine manufacturers in the preparation of vaccines. He's been a member of the European Bacterial Conjugate Vaccine Network. He's a scientist, or has been a scientist at the National Research Council, a research fellow at Health Canada, a teacher at the YMCA, and vice chair of the Mississauga Cycling Advisory Committee. Wow. Why would someone with that kind of a resume and background want to come out after retiring and put their name forward to run for the Green Party? Why?
Well, Brian, I think it's really comes down to, I see a need for scientific expertise in Parliament. When you see some of the things that are being done, some of the decisions that have been made regarding scientific research in Canada, I see there's a lack of sort of an understanding of what science is all about. And, scientists don't do too badly. Like if you look at Angela Merkel and Margaret Thatcher, they were chemists originally. And so there's maybe some kind of chemistry there between being a chemist and getting into politics. And I think they bring a degree of analytical ability to problems that are at hand, and are able to parse them and understand them and find a way forward that is works for the public and benefits the public. And So I thought maybe I could give my hand trying that also.
I think the scientific aspect is very true, but you've also got an incredible knowledge in and experience in vaccines, and that's obviously got to be unbelievably topical today. Tell me a little bit about what you think about vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a very delicate issue, very interesting issue. I have to say that going around now for the last week and talking to people, it is the most common thing that people talk about. And usually it's the people who don't want it. They are against having a vaccine mandate. And it is, it should not be a political issue. That should be something that a statesman brings forward, has conversations with the public, brings in the interested parties, brings in the unions, and finds a solution to how do we get as many people vaccinated as possible. And just by, slapping it down as a political football, you alienate about 20% of the population. And of course, this played in the political calculation. Most of those people who are vaccine hesitant do tend to be conservatives. And so it just lands a turd on top of the conservatives when they're trying to do their story. And so I think it's kind of an unfair to make it as a political ball. My personal, this is not, the Green Party doesn't have a position on this, but the way I would move forward with it would really be to try to engage with the vaccine hesitant people and get them to be on board. A number of the unions and in fact the Ontario Public Service Union has come forward with some compromises that can help people who are vaccine hesitant and do alternative things such as everyday testing and wearing of masks and things like that. You have to understand, and this is something that, of course, vaccine manufacturers are very much aware of, is because, of course, the more people that get vaccinated, the more their profits are. So it's in their interest to understand people who are vaccine hesitant. And really, it's a very deep-seated, they're not going to tell you this. What they're going to tell you is that, it's my right. It's a human rights issue. I get to control what goes inside my body. But really what it comes down to is there's something that scared them. And whether it's needles or some bad experience, probably even before their ability to remember, maybe as a baby, they had a bad experience. And so they're just afraid, frankly, of needles. And so you need to, these people aren't stupid. They're not vaccine hesitant because they don't want to, participate in protecting each other. It's just that they have a very deep-seated fear. And so we need to respect those people and not trot on them in our effort to bring protection to the entire population.
We're chatting tonight with Craig Laferriere, who is the Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Craig. And I'm going to just slam a whole bunch of questions at him and see what he thinks and how he stands up to policy discussions. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. A real pleasure of mine to introduce you tonight to Craig Laferriere, who is the Green Party candidate in this federal election that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. A Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. Craig, I've been involved in politics in the past, and Mississauga Centre, most people think is a liberal-oriented riding. It's held right now by an incumbent. The incumbent happens to be the Minister of Transportation. So not only is an incumbent, but it's an incumbent that's a cabinet minister. It is, I wouldn't say, thought of as an environmentally oriented riding. How do you think you're going to win?
Well, I think right now there's a big opportunity for the Green Party because I think worldwide we're seeing the effects of climate change. It's just so undeniable right now. And despite the fact that the Liberals have done a pretty good job, they have put forward an agenda for controlling greenhouse gases, ensuring that we have reductions in pollution, switching over to non-greenhouse producing forms of transportation. it's just not enough. The targets that the Liberal Party has set, and it's in the past it was 30% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030. It's just not enough, and we need to really ramp that up. And that's where the Green Party stands: is that we want to have more aggressive reductions in greenhouse gases, and we have ways and plans about how to do that. Policies that will and programs that will lead us to those reductions in greenhouse gases. So I think the population is ready. They're looking out there. They're looking at the Greens now, and they're saying, you know, do these people have credibility? Are these people able to rule? Are they able to make decisions that are balanced and fair? And I can see that there are good people stepping up into the Green Party. Annamie Paul has, if you listen to her speak, she's really great. She's right on top of things. She speaks clearly. She knows what she's talking about. So I think the Green Party its time is coming, and I think the time is now.
Greens have broken through provincially in a couple of places, such that they actually, you know, have held the balance of power. And as you mentioned, they've broken through in Europe. But they haven't broken through federally. And Annamie Paul has had her issues. I've had the pleasure of interviewing her, and I agree she's quite impressive. But she's had her challenges, both with winning her own seat as well as you know, controlling the Green Party. Elizabeth May, who is the long-term leader, some pollsters think may be the only person that wins for the Green Party. What do you say to that?
You know, I think Elizabeth May was smart to step back from the leadership, because let's face it, she's an incredibly talented person. Her integrity is impeccable. Her ability to speak is fantastic. And a lot of people in the country could relate to her. But she recognized that, you know, as a federal party, it can't just be British Columbia, that there had to be, the Green movement had to move out across the country. And so she stepped back and allowed a leadership race, and Annamie Paul won that leadership race. And of course, that is going to shift the balance of what's going on in the Green Party from British Columbia to across the country. And of course, that's going to step on some toes. There's some people who don't want to lose their jobs as being the core of the Green Party. So there was some ruffled feathers there, but it's going to it's inevitable. It's going to spread, especially in the years to come, when we see more and more of these climate disasters. People are really going to want a party in power who knows how to deal with it and has the moral backbone of the country to face the difficult decisions that are going to be required in the coming years.
People are seeing, you know, wildfires in the West, record heat waves in the West, unbelievable floods in the Gulf and along the eastern seaboard. Do you think people connect these, you know, unique, unusual, once in 100-year kind of weather events with climate change?
I don't see how they can't. It's you know, in British Columbia, having 45-degree, you know, temperatures for weeks on end, it's unheard of. And you know, the floods in Europe also related to, you know, the increased moisture in the air from the increased temperature. The science really is there that these extreme events are related to climate change. And the worst thing is that there are going to be more of them, and they're going to be more frequent. So the clock is ticking. We have to get on with it.
How are we going to do that? How are we going to get on with it? Is it carbon taxes or something more than carbon taxes?
Yeah, I think, you know, I was listening this morning on the CBC. They had some experts on talking about you know, different parties and their platforms and how they're, you know, from an economic point of view, how they're expected to work in the public. And the carbon tax is generally agreed now by everyone to be the most effective way to get people to reduce their carbon emissions. And, you know, and making it sort of tax neutral in that money gets pushed back into the economy means people aren't hurting. All it means is that they shift where they spend their money. and so shifting it away from carbon producing, products is the way to go. The way to actually do this, I think, is going to involve not only the tax but also government incentives and research. And I think one thing that I'm particularly interested in is hydrogen. And Canada seems to have quite a lead in hydrogen technology. And I was speaking with one of the persons in my riding as I was walking around, and we started talking about the shift over from natural gas to using hydrogen and how technologically feasible that is. And he certainly thought it's feasible, and it's a place where Canada, as I said, has some expertise. So this is, not only an opportunity to get ahead of the curve, but also develop some technology that Canada can begin to export around the world, and become a leader in this kind of technology.
Well, I'll have to introduce you to the president of Hydrofuel, which is a company that specializes not just in hydrogen, but in ammonia. And he's a resident of your riding, and he's been a active supporter of ammonia. And maybe you could explain to people that hydrogen and ammonia don't have any carbon molecules in them, and so therefore, when you burn them in an internal combustion engine or a internal combustion engine that's been modified, you get energy, but you don't get any carbon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it would just be releasing nitrogen. I guess I don't know the full details of what you're talking about, but if it's from ammonia, there's no carbon in ammonia, so it would release nitrogen and water probably. And
streetcars across North America ran on ammonia in the 1910s and 1920s, and all that dribbled out of the back exhaust was a couple of water droplets.
Yeah, sounds like that's also technology that can replace fossil fuels.
And some people are thinking that it would be far better to invest in something like that rather than a pipeline to take bitumen from Alberta to the West Coast. What do you think about the federal government buying that pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, it was so ironic, the day after they had made a statement on, I forget what it was, on something, going green, and then the day after they buy a pipeline. It's just they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. It was a big mistake, I think. And let's face it, Alberta, a lot of its economy is based on fossil fuels, and they don't want to change. Their lifestyle is very good. So there is economic pain that's going to go through, and we have to figure out a way to deal with that. And one of the things that Alberta did for a long time, when they were making so much money from selling fossil fuels, is they used to have this bank account, and they invested a lot of their money into research and development. I know a lot of scientists who moved to Alberta because research funding was available there. So they did some smart moves back then in order to prepare for the day when fossil fuels ran out, or which they didn't anticipate, that fossil fuels need to be stopped because they're so damaging to the environment.
So Alberta also, as you undoubtedly know, is a leader in solar. One of the reasons why is that they've got a lot more sun than we have, and so they have more sun days. I interviewed just last week the head of business services for the Edmonton International Airport, and they're going to be launching the largest solar farm in all of Western Canada on lands of the Edmonton Airport. And they also are a leader in hydrogen, and there's major hydrogen developments going in just north of Edmonton. And one of the big developments in that regard that you're probably aware of is that what you can do is you can use hydrocarbons as the source material for making hydrogen at source, and then capture the carbon and restore it, effectively capture it into the ground. And so a very effective way of keeping those jobs in Alberta, exploiting the hydrocarbons that we have, is producing hydrogen or ammonia at source. And when you do it at source, you can actually capture all of the carbon, and then you're not shipping carbon, and you're not consuming carbon, and you're not emitting carbon into the atmosphere.
Sounds like a good plan. I don't know how energy efficient it will be, but if they can make it energy efficient, then that is also a very feasible way to go.
Well, the proponents of it think that it's going to be more energy efficient than what we're currently doing, because what you're doing is not shipping carbon. So the hydrogen or the ammonia on a per whatever basis, per cubic square foot or per pound or whatever the measurement is, you're actually shipping more energy because the carbon doesn't produce the energy. The carbon is just the pollution. And so what you're doing is you're leaving the pollution behind and not shipping it around.
Oh, that sounds really smart.
So carbon taxes, move to hydrogen. What else can solve our climate change issues?
Well, I think, public transportation, of course, is something that does help people get off out of their cars. I try to ride my bike as much as possible these days. So, again, I was on the Mississauga Cycling Advisory Committee, again, trying to just get people out and walking more. It would be nice to see more walking space. Mississauga, let's face it, is a city that was really designed around cars. But you go to Europe and you take a look at some of the cities they have there, where the entire downtown section is closed off to cars, and it's just people walking around. And suddenly, when you create a space like that, you find people filling it up. They like to be there where they're walking around and they can be with each other. And so creating spaces in the cities where that are more pedestrian friendly than car friendly, I think that would be I'd love to see that coming to Mississauga.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because the city of Toronto was actually embarked on quite an aggressive bike lane strategy, where along Bloor Street, along other major arterial roads, you've got bike lanes separated from cars. And it's interesting, and you're probably more knowledgeable about this than I, but the statistics say that if you're separated by a line, then bike usage goes up. But if you're separated by a curb, bike usage goes up dramatically. And so therefore, the biggest impediment to people not biking more is the fear of the car crashing into them. And so therefore, if you can give them some security of at least a lane, if not a curb, then bike usage goes up dramatically. But it doesn't appear that we're doing enough of it in Mississauga. How come? What more can we do?
Yeah, this was an issue in the Mississauga Cycling Advisory Committee. It's sort of trying to retrofit a city that was built for cars to put bike paths in. There are a lot of bike paths in parts of Mississauga, but they're not connected to each other. So, if you're a commuter and you're wanting to get to the subway station or something like that, you really can't find a bike path to get there. You've got to, at some point, get onto the road and be competing with traffic. And, I've done that a lot myself. When I was lecturing at the University of Toronto, I used to, ride my bike over to the Kipling subway station and then take the subway the rest of the way into town. And a lot of that route, most of that route is on roads, and it's you're getting exhaust in your face, and you're cars zooming past at high speed. It's a hair-raising experience. I think if people ask for it, the city will do it. And this was a nice thing about being on the Cycling Advisory Committee, is that at the time when I was there, of course, it was Mayor McCallion who was mayor, and she was always interested. She came out to a lot of the advisory committee meetings. She came out to some of the events that we organized. We had something called the Tour de Mississauga, where we would pick a quadrant of the city and organize a tour and get the cyclists out, and it grew rapidly because people do want to do it. And I think that helped for the city to identify, okay, what paths do we need to connect to each other. And so I think when people want it, especially when if we get this transit line going up here in Ontario, and so people see it as a way that they just ride their bike to a transit hub and then park there and then take transit the rest of the way. I know I prefer that because I can read while I'm on the subway and I don't have to worry about parking. And as long as, if I'm working my regular hours, I don't need to have the flexibility of a car. I can just rely on public transportation. So again, but there's that always that sort of saying there, if you build it, they will come. But if they're wanting it, does the city know they're wanting it yet? Sort of the building it sort of makes people realize, yeah, this is something that we want. So it's kind of a difficult way to go. And I think this is a role where the federal government can step in, that they can do this kind of thing to have programs in place where this is the kind of thing that we want, where we want to have more people power, more pedestrian friendly cities.
So Craig, you probably don't know this, but my sister actually has a resume comparable to yours. She worked at National Research Council. She was Assistant Deputy Minister of the Environment. And she was one of the people responsible for conveying to the political people the scientific justification for the Paris Accords a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And she's got a PhD in microbiology. So she's sort of got your sort of pedigree from an academic standpoint. And I'll never forget when she said, Brian, we need to do this, and it's still not enough. And this is the defining issue of our generation. And I think that is got to be, the one winning potential policy of the Green Party, that this is the defining issue of our generation. If we're able to tackle climate change, if we're able to actually bring the increase in temperature down to a 2% growth, and my sister would argue it's got to come down to a 1% growth eventually, that will save humanity. And she would argue, and I think people that really know would argue that that's not an extreme comment, that humanity really is at risk because of climate change. And when you think about it, what killed off the dinosaurs was climate change. What created Canada and our Rocky Mountains was the Ice Age, climate change. So climate change has that ability to wreak havoc.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think people sort of understand this maybe on a conscious level, but maybe on an unconscious level. It's hard to know. But some of the predictions, especially if the world goes to a 4 degrees increase in temperature, huge swaths of the earth will be uninhabitable. And what that means is there's going to be massive migration. And I think we're not ready for that. Like just look what happened in, Syria has been having a drought, started in 2007 and went on for years and years and years. And then we saw this huge migration of Syrians out of Syria. Of course, the war, started because of this migration of people. And you hear some different comments about, was climate change the cause of all the problems in Syria? And some people say no, it was, but to me, it seems fairly obvious that it was part of what was going on.
Bad government is bad, but not being able to eat because of arid land is really, really bad.
Yeah, that's the only thing that will get people to move is if they can't eat. And so you have 1 million people trying to move into Europe. Look at all the turmoil that caused. Well,
changed politics.
Yeah. So I think, that people may or may not be aware of that, but I think, if we don't stop, the huge increase in temperature, there will be these mass migrations. And, and then I think as a country, we need to prepare for that. I think we need to, as I said to one person I was talking with, I don't mind if the Americans start, emigrating to Canada, but they just have to leave their weapons at the border.
We're chatting tonight with Craig Laferriere, who is the Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Craig in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce you to Craig Laferriere, who is the Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. Craig, tell us a little bit about the boundaries of the riding of Mississauga Centre, if you could. Where do you go from in the south to the north, east to the west, if you could?
Yeah, so on the west side is the Credit River, and on the east side is here, Ontario. And then on the south side is Dundas. But on the north, it sort of wiggles up a bit and goes around Bristol and across over to I think it's Credit View.
So one of the interesting things about Mississauga Center is it didn't exist a couple of years ago, and it was one of the new ridings created, and it's now one of the fastest growing ridings because you've got huge growth around Square One, where you've got the new downtown, and the new downtown is populated by younger people and more ethnic people than the balance of Mississauga Center. How do you think that changes the political matrix of your chances?
I really think it helps a lot. Certainly for the week that I've been going around talking to people, I definitely get young people being very much interested in the Green Party. A lot of them say that they plan to vote Green or they have voted Green in the past. So that's a really exciting innovation or change in the population for Mississauga. If there's a lot of young people, I think that will help the Green Party tremendously. And then in terms of immigrants, I think it just depends on which immigrant group we're talking about. The Greens did very well in Germany, so I've had some interactions with people who speak German that are very positive towards the Green Party. So there may be some carryover there, and I think I can't think of any other groups just off the top of my head where I noticed a sort of a continuous, supportive statements for the Green Party. But I think, with the immigrant population, I think Greens will have a good chance with them. I think having Annamie Paul as our leader shows that, the Green Party is a multicolored party. And so that I think will appeal to a lot of people.
So I think you're right. I think that you could actually be successful if you get high turnout, because I think the high turnout is going to mean that younger people and more ethnic people are voting. And if it's a lower turnout, then it's going to be people that have always voted, and they tend to vote the way they've always voted rather than taking a chance on something new. And you take a look at the history of success of the Green Party, it's been when turnout has been high, and when particularly turnout amongst young people has been high. And so somehow you got to figure out a way of getting that turnout up, getting people excited, and knowing that if they turn out, you got a better chance. The other thing about the riding is, while it was thought of as being a liberal stronghold, it did go conservative provincially. And so what it shows is that it can swing. And so I think that the Conservatives and the Liberals will potentially be competitive, and that gives you an opportunity because the vote will split to a certain extent. How are you going to exploit that? How are you going to play that? And what if people say a vote for the Green is a vote away from the Liberals, and therefore you're going to elect a Conservative? How do you position yourself in that regard?
Yeah, well, I've gotten into some discussions with people who are liberals, and I have to say, and also, to tell you the truth, I am a former liberal myself, and what I'm hearing is that people are fed up with Trudeau. They don't trust him, and so I think they don't want to give him a majority. And so that becomes very risky then, because they'll say, okay, I'm not going to vote for Trudeau because I don't want him to get a majority. But then, it might end up happening like what happened in Nova Scotia. So too many people decided not to give the Liberal leader a majority, and then it ended up giving the Conservatives a majority. So I think it was a really wrong time for Mr. Trudeau to trigger an election. I think he should have just carried on as he did with a minority government. I think the people were happy. People in general are happy with minority governments because generally you get good governance. And I don't think they want to go into a position where it's a majority, because then there's less talk, less balance about the decisions that are being made. So I think the Green Party is an alternative to the Conservatives to vote for in this riding, and let the Green Party become get a seat and to keep the power in check.
So you are almost the exact opposite of the incumbent from a career standpoint. You've worked in in industry and science, academia your whole life. You've retired, and now you're trying politics. Your competitor in the race has been in politics almost his whole career. And because of that, he knows a lot of people, and he's got a lot of IOUs, and he's got experience in politics, but he doesn't have experience in business and academia and science, etc. How are you going to play that? Like the resumes are so dramatically different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I must admit, I haven't given much thought to that. Like I said, I'm a green. I'm not a politician, and I don't think that way. I don't make calculations in that kind of way, but I suppose if I am in the political circus, I need to start thinking that way. One thing that somebody said to me, which I found very inspiring, is they said, what we need and what we don't see are statesmen. What we see are politicians. And they're just looking for an angle about how to get elected. And whereas if you have some people who are statesmen, their main concern is for the country. And it's their objective to not rule by what is most popular and what is most likely to get them elected, by what is the right thing and the right decisions for the entire country. So that's how I would approach that kind of question and say, I'm not going to try to calculate what I can do to get one over on Mr. Algebra. I've met him. He's a very a charming person. I haven't had a chance to get into any in-depth conversations with him, but he seems to have pretty good integrity, and he gets out there. I've been at a few events where he comes and walks by, and he'll say hello. So he's a worthy opponent, and I wish him the best, and I hope we hear him speaking about his vision and passion for what he would like to see for our government.
So some people criticize the government, the Liberal Party, for calling the election, saying that the pandemic's not so bad, we can have an election, and then the very first policy they come out with is for a vaccine passport and vaccine mandates for the civil service, which suggests the pandemic is really bad. And as we all know, we can see the numbers going up, the Delta variant taking regrettably a greater hold. In a similar fashion, some people would say that this announcement just in the last couple of weeks prior to the election of major spending on transit in Mississauga, across the GTA, across the country, etc., is nice, great, but why did it take the threat or opportunity of an election to make that announcement? What do you say to that?
Yeah, it has been a political football for many years. The idea of people want good public transportation, and it's like I said, if you're a statesman, it's one of your issues that you're dealing with all the time, and you don't just bring it out when it's as sort of a piece of candy to offer to the public in hopes that you'll be reelected. So, I actually worked in Montreal for several years, and I had to take the Via Rail on many times back and forth between Montreal and Toronto, and so these sort of offerings of, we're going to do a high-speed rail corridor between Windsor to Quebec City, and it comes out every election time as a sort of a bait that's used, but nothing ever comes of it. So, I think we need to see long-term continual efforts to transform our transportation into something that's really usable and really reliable.
At one point in time, the Green Party was in support of a guaranteed annual income. Do you support a guaranteed annual income?
Sorry, support?
Of a guaranteed annual income.
Oh, yes. So I have to say that, in terms of economics, I actually went onto the CBC website and did their vote compass. And so in terms of politics and in terms of social issues, I'm green, but it looks like I'm still a liberal when it comes to economic issues. So, I've read through what the Green Party is proposing, and I like what I'm reading, but I can't say that I can just automatically tell you what the Green Party position is on economics. I think these things require a deeper analysis on my part, just to know all the issues. I've heard about the guaranteed income from other countries, and they say that it works. So if this is something where we'd rely on the economists to be able to tell us, in the end, it does work.
Well, we've had a great example of it in the last year with our SARS and the employment support and income support programs that have been put in place, and it's been effectively a guaranteed annual income. Hugh Segal, a former conservative senator and advisor to Brian Mulroney, came on my show and pitched guaranteed annual income. Elizabeth May has done the same. And then I had a fascinating interview with some people out of Vancouver that what they did is they gave 7,000 people $7,000 a year rather than the weekly or monthly welfare checks and other support payments that they would typically get. And they found that over 80% of them actually made material changes, positive changes in their life. Because when you treated people like adults and allowed them to make decisions, they, for the first time, had first and last month's rent, or they could afford a community college program, or they could get off the street and move somewhere. And when you treated them like kids and only gave them a little tiny bit of money once a week, they acted like kids.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also all the hoops that you have to go through and signing papers and figuring out the bureaucracy. I mean, I remember when I was a young man, people knew how to scam the systems to get money who really didn't need the money, but they just knew how to fill out application forms the right way. So I think having it as a universal program, guarantees that people who maybe, aren't as experienced in knowing how to deal with bureaucracy get that chance to, not have to worry about, where's my next meal coming from, and take the time and to learn and get up to speed with, how these things all work, rather than starting from scratch and trying to understand how do I apply for these things. So there's a lot to be said for it. But as I say, I'm not an expert in these kinds of things, and I really can't speak very well to them.
We're chatting with Craig Laferriere, the Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. We're going to take a break for some final messages and then come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour in Saga 960. So a federal election is on. It's coming in September, and I'm trying to meet and interview a bunch of different candidates from different parties. And I'm going to try to give all the different parties equal time. I've had a Liberal, I've had a Conservative, I've got an NDP coming on next week. And tonight we've got Craig Laferriere, who is the Green Party candidate in Mississauga Centre. I know Craig because actually go to church with him, and we've been in church pageants and plays with him. A very impressive guy. And I got to tell you, one of my criticisms of too many politicians in the past has been that they're career politicians and don't really have a lot of what I would call real world experience. People would say, well, Brian, you're just an old guy, and so that's why you just respect old guys rather than young people that have a point of view. Maybe that's true, but I got to tell you, Craig Laferriere has got a resume that I think should be in Parliament. Whether you should vote Green in Mississauga Centre or not is your choice. But a gentleman with this kind of resume is the kind of person that we need to have in Parliament. He is a consultant in vaccine manufacturing and licensing for CanVax. He is the regional medical research specialist for Pfizer for 7 years. He was a lecturer at the University of Toronto. He was the senior scientist with GlaxoSmithKline. He worked as scientist for the National Research Council for 3 years, for Health Canada for 2 years. He's got a PhD in synthetic organic chemistry from the University of Ottawa, and he's got a bachelor's from Carleton University. And he was vice chair of the Mississauga Cycling Advisory Committee. So he's been involved in the local community, and he hasn't been involved in politics previously, which some people would say is a big negative, and probably is a negative from electability standpoint. But I think it's actually a positive from someone who's not jaundiced by the partisan politics that too often plays. So maybe, Craig, I could just ask you a few policy questions that you might get asked on on the street. Was decriminalization of marijuana a good strategy?
Wow. You know what? Going from door to door, you'd be surprised at the number of places where I smell marijuana coming out the front door. So it's obviously had a potential increase in usage, and I think I think the studies have shown that decriminalization is better. These people who are not forced into crime in order to buy it or to hide it. Enables them to live normal lives, and so I think on the whole, I think it has had a beneficial effect. I'm not sure. I've heard, like, has it really cut out the black market? That hasn't necessarily done that. I think that was one of the objectives of
also
it.
one of the issues is that, as you probably know, while it's now legal, distribution is retail distribution is something that the local municipality gets to decide on. Toronto, Milton, Oakville, etc., have approved distribution. Mississauga hasn't. And so one of the criticisms of that strategy is that people are still going to consume if they want to consume, but the black market is more prevalent in Mississauga because of the lack of distribution. So do you think that different municipalities should have been allowed to effectively go dry, put in prohibition?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think that it is up to each municipality. And really, if you want to go buy some pot, you just get it on the train and go downtown and you can buy it there. So I don't think it really deprives anyone. Whether, it creates a black market is probably anyone who's selling it on the street in Mississauga is going down to Toronto and buying it at a government, approved store. And so they're basically just acting like a courier. I don't think it is being smuggled in, from Mexico or anywhere anymore. So I think that's okay if the city doesn't want to have to deal with it. They want to, I think it is a local decision. That's fine with me.
Do we need stronger gun control laws?
Do we ever? I think just seeing what happens in the US and how they really feel that owning a gun is their personal right. And that leaks over the border. I'm sure that there's, unregistered guns and handguns and these kinds of things leaking into Canada that we don't need. If somebody is a hunter and, they have a hunting weapon, it's carefully regulated, it's kept away from children. That's their lifestyle, and that's part of Canadian heritage, and that's fine. But handguns, there's no place for handguns. There's no place for automatic and semi-automatic weapons in Canada. We need to make sure those things stay out and are just don't exist here.
Both the Liberals and the Conservatives say that they believe in a woman's right to choose in regards to abortion. But the difference is that if a doctor doesn't want to provide the abortion, both Liberals and Conservatives say that he doesn't have to, but Liberals say that he has to provide a recommendation to someone else that will, and Conservatives say he can just not recommend at all. In other words, the Liberals would describe this as it's the doctor's right to choose rather than the woman's right to choose. What do you believe?
It's really funny. I was thinking about this earlier today when thinking about the people who are vaccine hesitant, and their rationale for saying that they're vaccine hesitant is because they say, I have the right to choose what happens to my own body. And this is the very same argument that pro-choice people are saying, is that they have the right to choose what happens to their body. And yet, I have a very dear friend who is vaccine hesitant. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say she's anti-vaccine. And the funny thing is that she's getting all her information about this from a pro-life group that she's a member of. And she's forwarded to me some of the information that gets forwarded to her from this group about vaccines and whatnot. And it's simply false information. And so it's funny that, we have this group that wants to be able to have rights about controlling what goes into your body, but yet, does not want to have rights about how you deal with the pregnancy. So I think, it's an issue that I'm not fully aware with how the Green Party stands on it, what their policies are. From my personal perspective, I think a physician is providing a government service, and as a government employee, they have to provide information that the government recommends. So I think there's no choice there. They even if it's against their personal values, I think they have to follow the law.
Craig, final question. The door is open. You got 30 seconds, and the voter says, "Why should I vote for you?" What do you tell them?
Is that I'm going to bring to Parliament your views, the local views of my riding. I'm going to represent you in the federal government. And you tell me right now, what are those issues that you want to make sure are heard in Parliament? Okay,
Craig Laferriere, the Green Party candidate at Mississauga Centre. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Election day is coming. You got mail-in options, you got advance polling day options, and you can vote on election day. Think now about how you're going to vote, not necessarily for the person, but how you're going to get your ballot into that ballot box. Because if nothing else, whether you vote Green, Liberal, NDP, or Conservative, you got to vote, because it's the only way we get good government is if we actually vote. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Craig, good luck.
Thank you so much, Brian.